Hello and warm welcome to today's episode. Today I want to give you hands-on guidance on how to get started with Microsoft Fabric Real-Time Intelligence. Real-time intelligence, I would say, is one of the hottest topics in the data analytics space, and the RTI components within Fabric are really a hidden gem from my perspective, and definitely something you should have a look at. There's just so much potential, not only for streaming data, but analyzing basically any kind of data. Yeah, you can basically make any kind of data source to a streaming data source and really get insights as fast as possible by using these kind of capabilities. So actually I plan to do a series of videos around real-time intelligence, but today I want to start from the very beginning, and I want to help you to do your first hands-on steps with RTI by a follow-along tutorial. But before starting with the tutorial, I want to give you a little overview on what we are looking at. So real-time intelligence within Fabric, it's not only one workload, but a whole collection of workload. It basically covers every process you need around data analytics, like ingesting and processing the data, analyzing and transforming the data, acting on the data, but also visualizing the data. So it allows you to ingest from all kinds of data sources, like traditional streaming data sources like Confluent Kafka, open source Kafka, Amazon Kinesis, also the Azure streaming services like Azure IoT Hub, Azure Event Hub, but also like connecting to logs which are coming actually from databases like change data capture logs, so allowing you to create like a stream on top of this change data capture logs and actually build up this kind of downstream analytics data model on top of these information you get directly from the databases. So this is what these event streams are for. It's basically their job to connect to these data sources, but it also allows you to do transformations on the fly, like aggregating the data, changing data types, kind of flattening JSON files, all these kind of capabilities. And there you basically have two options. Either you have the so-called activator sitting directly on top of the event stream. An activator basically sets up specific rules. You set up specific conditions on these data points, like if the data is beyond a specific or above a specific threshold or below a threshold, or even more complex conditions, and trigger an action on top of that. So sending a Teams notification, sending an email, or trigger for more complex automation downstream. You can trigger a Power Automate flow, and from there, I mean, your options are basically limitless what kind of actions you want to trigger there. In the middle of everything is the so-called event house. An event house basically hosts so-called Kusto databases. And Kusto database is actually the centerpiece there. It's a really powerful engine for data analytics. It's really trimmed for high performance on data, specifically time series data. That means like all kinds of event data from sensors, from telemetry, from log data. And this includes like scenarios like monitoring things, IoT scenarios. But I mean, basically, you can analyze all kinds of data. There are also, data coming from those databases, and making sure this data is processed whenever it comes, in an event-driven approach, and get results and insight out of this data as fast as possible. In addition to that, you have the so-called KQL query set, which allows you to collect KQL queries, so queries in the so-called Kusto query language, which you use to query the data which you have in the event house. And very interestingly, also the so-called real-time dashboard, which allows you to really monitor this data and have this continuous update on your visuals to analyze the data as soon as it arrives in the event house, as soon as you do transformations there to see like the most recent data, the freshest data there. Also, one component there which is pretty cool within Fabric is so-called real-time hub. It's basically independent of these items here. It's one one option you have when you go to the UI to basically see all kind of streaming workloads which you have read permissions to. Yeah, so you see all the kind of event streams and event houses, activators, and so on, and all kind of streaming data sources you're connected to see this in one place to start working from there or continue your work from there. So, done with the theory, let's jump into the hands-on tutorial. So, what I will do is basically I do like the end-to-end tutorial you find in the official documentation. Obviously, I share the link down below. You can follow along if you like. I really like this tutorial. It basically goes through all these different components I was just showing, and really you see how it works and get a better feeling for it. It's using live data, so you see things moving there, and you can always replicate it within your environment, even using your Fabric trial capacity for that. As I said, I will share the link below. So pause the video, open the documentation if you like, or you just build along as I'm explaining it. So let's just jump into it. So here we are in my Fabric environment. I just logged in with app.fabric.microsoft.com, and I'm still on the home screen here. What I want to do first, obviously, I want to create a new workspace for this tutorial, for this project. So I give it a really nice name here, tutorial workspace. I don't know, the current date, for example. I mean, you can run this directly on a Fabric capacity you have, or you will just run it on the free Fabric trial capacity. And once you set up this workspace, what you want to do is create a so-called event house. Yeah, so I mean, this is where you will land data, so it obviously makes sense to create this first. So I give it also a very creative name, like tutorial event house, for example, and create it. What is happening, it will create an event house and actually already one default Kusto database within this event house. So you will get some instructions here, but we don't need it at that point. And what you see is like this overview of this event house. You see like this KQL database, which you can click on, and where you see, okay, it's still empty. How to get data now to this event house? Now we want to create a so-called event stream to fill the data base with events data. So going back to my workspace, I can now create a so-called event stream. Using this event stream, I can give it a nice name, basically calling it, I don't know, event stream tutorial, and start working from here. When I'm creating this event stream, I want to select a specific data source to get started from. And I mean, if you say like use external data source, you see like all kinds of data sources which you have available here. So you have Azure Event Hub, Azure IoT Hub. You can also connect to the OneLake events to actually see if things are happening in the Fabric OneLake. Amazon Kinesis, Kafka, all these kind of data sources, and especially interesting like the CDC logs from, for example, Cosmos DB, SQL database, SQL MI. And what is really interesting, the event streams actually, if you like, you can also say like, I want to create a so-called custom endpoint, and then you actually have an Azure Event Hub endpoint or a Kafka endpoint or an AMQP endpoint directly sitting in front of your event stream, and you can actually send data directly to this custom endpoint. For this tutorial, we want to use some sample data, and we actually want to use the so-called bicycle data. Yeah? So what you say is, I want to use this bicycle sample data. There are also other ones if you like to try them out, and we give it a nice name. so how it will show up within my event stream. um, I can see there's already data flowing in, yeah? So this is actually the current time here. I see data around this bicycle. So I see the bike point IDs, the street, the neighborhood, some geographic information here. Will be pretty cool there to visualize that on a map. And I see how many of those bikes are at this station and how many empty docks are still there. The next thing I actually want to do is to do some simple transformation. So I have this set up now as a single source. You can also have multiple sources. And if I want to do some transformations, I have some kind of pre-defined operations. What I want to do in this sense is something really simple. So I want to manage those fields. What does this mean? To edit this or to set it up, I need to trigger this pencil here. And here I can basically say which kind of fields of this incoming stream do I want to use. And there you have the option, just with an easy button, say, obviously I want to keep all the data at that point, but I want to add some new fields. Okay, what kind of fields do you want to add there? I mean, you can use directly some kind of built-in functions, yeah? So for example, using the so-called system timestamp to give you an indication of when this data was actually ingested, yeah? So using that field, I can always kind of relate to when this data was coming in. So I'm just calling this timestamp now. I click save. Okay, it says an error because if I want to do some transformation, it should kind of point me at some point to a destination. So clicking on this plus, extending the stream now, I can set where should this data land. I can send this to Activator to check if there's some thresholds. I can actually send it to as an input for another stream. I can use it for archiving the data, sending it to a lakehouse in the Fabric 1 lake. But what I want to do is actually working with the data as soon as possible. So I set up this event house. This also needs some setup, and here I want to give this a nice name, event house destination. I set up a workspace. What was the name? Tutorial workspace. Then it finds, okay, this workspace, there's one event house. In this event house, there's one KQL database. And then it will send this to a specific destination table. It finds no destination table because there are none yet. So I can create a new table for that. Let's call this table, let's say raw data, as it is the data as it flies in. I can also change the input format, and to actually save it, I click the publish button here, and this will commit my changes and actually set it as active. You can always see, like, if you want to stop or resume the data by seeing, okay, the active button on your data sources, and also like the buttons if you want to ingest it. What is really important here, when you are looking at an event stream, always check, am I in the live view? So am I just checking like how data is flowing in, how everything is set up, basically the read-only mode, or do I want to change in the edit mode and do some work on a kind of a new version? Basically, you can edit it while it's still running live, and then you publish the new version of it to do some changes in between. So this can take a little bit until this is all set up, but now I can see data is flowing in, and I can actually see that data is actually also after this manage field transformation, where I see now this new column timestamp. This is actually how it will fly into this event house. So let's check out how this looks like on the event house side. So we're just switching here to the Kusto database. Yeah, if this moving too fast, go back to the workspace, go to your KQL database. What you want to set up now is like go to your database here, and actually there's like you can create a new query set on top of it. There's also like a default query set here, and in the query set you basically have like multiple tabs of running queries here. I mean, there are some basic KQL commands which you can try out. So our table, what was it called, raw data, you can actually run already some simple Kusto query commands. Things like take 100 gives you like the first or like some random 100 elements of this table. I can also see like how much data has been ingested in a specific hour. I can see like 168 new entries have been there. So you can actually run even queries not directly on the data itself, but also like on the mechanics behind it. What you can do as well is to give this kind of data some kind of structure. So you can do some so-called commands. This always starts with one dot here to change some mechanics. So in that sense, I want to change the raw data table, which has these kind of fields here, so that it will actually be within the so-called folder bronze. Yeah. So this will kind of move the data and give it some kind of structure. So it's not only like in this tables section here, but actually I can build some kind of logic of several layers there. Similar, let's say, like to a medallion architecture where you might have like bronze, silver, gold, or bronze 1, bronze 2, silver 1, silver 2, gold, platinum, whatever, or just call it realistic names. What do you want to do with the data, like landing zone, curated zone, refined zone, whatever you like. But you can use those folders to give it more structure. Obviously, this is, I wouldn't have called it raw data if I wouldn't want to do some transformations. So what I can do next is I can create a new table. I can give it a name, and I can define the schema. So this is how you define the schema here. So basically it's two new fields, which is bikes to be filled and action. And I want to put this in a folder called silver. So what will happen is we'll actually create this new table here, transformed data. Obviously, there will not much happening here. So if I go to transformed data and have a look at it, then it will be empty. But what I can do is to fill that table, and I want to fill that. Actually, I mean, we're talking about real-time intelligence. I want to fill up this transformed data table as soon as there is new data coming from the streaming data source over the event stream to this raw data table. I want to transform it as soon as this data is in this raw data table. And to do that, what I can do is I can create a function. So using that function, the content of this function basically returns me the result of a query. So if I run this query, I see the raw data. I do some kind of changes here with the string. So basically get rid of the spike points underscore prefix and only keep the numbers here so that I can actually use it as an integer. I want the spikes to be filled to say like how many empty dogs do I have minus the bikes which are already there. And I want to extend this, create a new field called action, which actually derives like from this kind of logic. Yeah, so it's either a value about 0, then I want to have this value as a string, or I want to put in NA if there's nothing available. And based on this function, or based on this the result of this query, I can actually build a so-called function, which I call transform data. And using that function, I can actually say that this query, it should always be run when there's new data coming into raw data. And the result of this query, it should fill up my transformed data table. And this is what we define as a so-called update policy. So basically, I'm saying I want to change something in the mechanics there. I run a so-called command on top of this table. I do update policy. So I define this policy of data update, and it says use this source data. So if there are changes in raw data, I want to run this function here. And and you can set it as enable true and also set some additional properties on top of that. And if I run that, what will happen? It will actually also backfill this table here. So it will look at what kind of data is already in raw data, which I need to transform, and actually all kind of new data which is coming to this source table, it will automatically apply this update policy. So this might take a little bit, but for the initial setup, but after that, you see that in transform data, I now see the data here when it was backfilled. And now you then can always kind of see, like, when new data is coming in, it will actually trigger this update policy and will also do those transformations directly on the fly. What you can do next is basically to run some kind of more kind of queries on top of it. For example, doing some kind of visualizations. So here I'm saying, okay, on this transformed data, I want to filter it on only a specific bike points and a specific neighborhoods, and project means I only want to see the columns timestamp and number of bikes. And I want to render this as a time chart. What does this look like? So basically it shows me across these different timestamps, it shows me the number of bikes. If I'm not really happy how the kind of automatic inference is selected the columns for this visual, I can always change it here as well. What you can do as well is you can not only use update policies to automatically apply changes and create like a new table out of it immediately, but basically also using so-called materialized views. Yeah, so I'm creating a new materialized view. So you see the dot here, so it's a command. It creates a new materialized view. It puts this materialized view in a folder called gold. It's called aggregated table, and this view sits on top of this table transformed data. That means every time there's a change in transformed data, I want to update this materialized view. What does this materialized view do? Basically, running this query here, it's doing a summarize. That means basically a group by on top of the bike point ID. And for the aggregation function here, it uses argmax. So it gives me like the the timestamp where I had the maximum number of bikes, and returns me those two values. And this is what I want to create as a materialized view. So running this command will actually set this up. So now I can run this query here and see what I get. So I'm basically visualizing that again. So I'm sorting it by bike point ID. So it's actually giving me these bike points by their ID in an ordered fashion. And then it shows me the number of bikes for each kind of bike point. As a next step, we will actually create a so-called real-time dashboard. But if you want to learn more about this Kusto query language, which is actually pretty cool. You can just Google it and search for the documentation, or you can actually do this in a playful way by doing cool stuff with the so-called Kusto Detective Agency, where you see like in really cool riddles train your KQL skills. There's always like hints how to get familiar with these commands. So I can really recommend this. So it's detective.kusto.io for like the later seasons, and for this new season you can call Season Fabric. Obviously, I will share that link with you in the description of this video. So let's come to real-time dashboards. I mean, you can go to your workspace and say, I want to create a new item from a type real-time dashboard, but you can also directly start from here by saying, okay, I already run a visual there, run a query here, and I have some nice visuals here, and I want to pin exactly this visual, obviously always updated to a so-called real-time dashboard. So you just click here on this button and say, I want to pin this to a dashboard. And as there is none yet, I just create a new one, give it a very creative name like tutorial dashboard, and give this tile a descriptive name, for example, recent bikes by bike point ID. And I can say, okay, I don't trust you. I actually want to see this dashboard. I want to see this in action. And so you can see, open this dashboard as soon as it is created. And now I can actually see that I have this dashboard here, and I see already one visual. But you can always create also new tiles to this dashboard in a variety of ways. So one way is clicking on this new tile button. It will ask you to start with a specific query. Obviously selecting the kind of KQL database you want to run this query against. So this time we're actually using the raw data table, and want to kind of limit this to the neighborhood Chelsea. So this visual will be actually just showing the data here. So I can click apply changes. To make changes on the tile, you can always edit it. And on the year, just renaming it, for example, I can just do this by using these tile options. So let's call this Chelsea bikes. Another option how to create tiles is using like an existing tile and clicking on this explore button. There you have like in this kind of editor a variety of ways to change things. For example, I could say, okay, this gives me like the whole data here about Chelsea, but I actually want to have some kind of aggregation. So what can I do? I click on add here and say I want an additional aggregation. For example, I want the maximum number of bikes. So I click here, I want to have the max operator on this column. Let's also call it max bikes. And I don't want to run the max on the whole table, but I actually want to add some group by logic. So I basically say I want to group by streets, for example. If I apply that, I see this is the kind of the query here. It started from raw data, it applied this filter, and then it actually, I see the KQL here, it summarized by street and created a new column, max bikes, as the maximum of number of bikes by street. So this is the result here. Okay, this is still not really visually appealing. So what can I do? I have all kinds of different options here to visualize that. For example, creating a bar chart. And now I can see in which kind of street I have the most bikes currently. If I'm happy with this visual, I can say pin to dashboard. By default, it will run this in the same dashboard, but you can also run it somewhere else. Let's give it this a nice name. For example, max bikes per street. Looks like a good name. And now I see this visual here. I can actually also move it. I can make it to a different size if I like, if I want to kind of place them next to each other. So I'm not done yet. I also want to create a map visual showing me the latest data. So what can I do? I can create like a new tile here. I start with the query again. So I want to see the raw data, and I only want to see data which was ingested like in the last hour using like this function here, go. Basically everything which is younger than 1 hour I want to see here. And now we see another option how to create like visuals for the dashboard. You see the results here, and you always have the option to visualize that here directly. So I can say like based on this data here on the right side, you have the visual formatting. So here I actually want to create a new tile about a map. So I'm saying the visual type should be, scrolling down here, should be a map. And then I need a location obviously for my map. So I can say I want to do this by latitude and longitude. The latitude column is my latitude, obviously. The longitude is my longitude column. The label column, yeah, that should be bike point ID. So this is all fine. I can also hard set this. And then I save it. This basically shows me, you can also make this bigger here. So this basically shows me like this nice view over London with all these kind of bike points here. So you can actually zoom in, zoom out, see the whole map here of London. Of course, this has an ugly name here, so I can go to the tile options again, give it a nice name, map of bike, bike dots and bike points, and have this set here. This basically creates me this nice dashboard here with all kinds of information. I can also say I will always want to refresh the data. I actually say I want to set up an auto refresh. Yeah, so basically setting up this auto refresh allows you to say I want this continuously refreshed. I want to run a refresh every 10 seconds. So this is what you could set up here. Yeah? So if I say I want to run this, let's say continuously, I just click apply here, and then it will basically apply the auto refreshes all the time. So if I switch to save here, forgot to save, but it's saving automatically, and then I can apply those changes. So now I have this constant refresh here. You see that it's always updating the fields here. So as soon as there's new data, it will automatically show within this this dashboard here. So the next thing I want to do is actually I create a Power BI report on top of the data. To do that, I go back to my KQL database. So you can go to your workspace, go to your KQL database. This time I want to create a new query set. Let's call this tutorial query set. And here I want to use or run a query which actually gives me all the kind of data points I need for my Power BI report. So I also use the raw data here. I run a query here on top of a summarization on top of the bike point ID, and I want to have like the argmax on where I like the latest data here on timestamp, and get the values from that timestamp for no bikes, no empty dogs, and so on by bike point ID. So this is kind of always the latest data on this timestamp. And what I want to do on top of this, I want to create some Power BI visuals. How to do that? I can click the button here, create Power BI report, and this will create me a new report in this kind of embedded view at the moment. I can already create some things here. So I can say I want to create, for example, the good old bar chart, and I want to say like I have the neighborhood on my x-axis, and I want to visualize the number of bikes and the number of empty dogs, and actually have the sum of it. I have this kind of preview here, but what I actually want to do is I want to save this report, so I can give it a nice name, for example, the tutorial report, and save it to a specific workspace. So I want to save that again to my tutorial workspace. Can find it, here it is. So saving it now to this tutorial workspace, and now I can directly go to this report and do some changes and so on. Okay, this put me to the wrong page, but if you go to my workspace here, refreshing the page, I can see the report now. I can click on the report and I should be seeing this visual which I created. If I would go to edit more, I can do some changes and add some new visuals if I like. Last but not least is setting an alert on top of your data. So what I can do as well is saying I want to actually get notified, or I want to trigger some kind of automated flow if something is happening with this data. So to do that, I can actually show you the real-time hub. So this is always there, sometimes it's also hidden in the dots here, but you will always find this real-time hub where you see all kinds of streaming data sources, event streams, event houses you have been using. And now I actually want to use my event hub stream tutorial stream, which I just created. And on top of that, you already see this kind of button here. I want to set an alert on top of this event stream. What you can do now is to say I want to check on each event, and I want to, for example, message me in Teams. I can set this up now and say, so I mean, this would mean like on each event. Obviously, this would be a little bit much, so I want to add some kind of condition. So you say on each event when, and then you can define already some kind of condition in this side panel here. So here I want to set like if the number of bikes, the bike point ID doesn't give me much information, but the number of bikes, if it's like, for example, less than 5, then you should message me in Teams. And this will actually create a new item. So I can actually say this should be also within my project workspace here. And I don't have an item for it yet, so I want to create a new tutorial activator. So this, when I click on the create button now, it will create this item for me, and now this item will be created and will show up in my workspace. You can already jump there. But you don't have to do that. You can also go to your workspace, probably hit the refresh button, and then you should be able to see this activator. And within the activator, you see this item here. I can see this kind of monitoring here. I see that these events are coming in. And if I go here, it will also show me if these conditions are met. Yeah, so you see which kind of at which kind of points data is coming in, and if these conditions are met. What we can do also to try it is actually to hit that test action button, and it will trigger this action just as a test already for you. So this basically wraps it up. So coming back to our overview, so what we did is we ingested and processed data using event streams from the sample data source, but it would look the same for all kinds of data sources. We used update policies and materialized view to work on the data, to create new versions, aggregations of the data, and building queries and visuals for the real-time dashboard on top of this event house data. In the end, I also showed you how to use that data also directly in Power BI reports, how this real-time hub looks like. And in the end, we actually also built this activator item on top of the event streams to trigger notifications. So this is it. This is what I wanted to show you. As I said, I will show you the link to tutorial to, if this was too fast for you, to build this by yourself. It's a really cool, well thought tutorial, so I can really recommend it. I hope you learned a little bit and enjoyed the video. If you like more videos like that, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I hope to see you around another time. Thank you. See you.